So we're doing our usual Monday stream. Um, got up a short time ago. I'm gonna this week. I really want to finish that documentary because I really did write almost the whole thing and even actually start editing it. I have like 20 minutes of stuff from it. My editor. Um, what would happen was that C-SPAN is a real pain in the backside because they don't have a website where you can go and just download a video. You put the URL in and you get it. You can stick clips in there. They're really aggravating. Instead, what they have is I've got a screen recorder, which is this thing I use to record the screen. But the issue is that a lot of times with doing that, it takes more space on my computer if I use it that way. So we're trying to figure out some kind of compromise. I'm still trying to figure out how I was able to download that one Rokana video from like 4 years ago. I don't know how I did that. I remember distinctively that it didn't even get the whole thing. There was like a minute left off, and the guy and someone in the comment section was like, "Where's the rest of it? Just go on C-SPAN." I thought that was hilarious. He has to get his extra minute of footage because if he doesn't, it's gonna I guess not be as enjoyable. Oh man. Now, I was getting really tempted to do a video about this that person and their ridiculous position on censorship, where that guy said that any censorship will lead to more of it, and I'm like, well, that's an extremely lazy position to have because in real life, there are restrictions on things you can say and do, and no one goes around and says if you put some restrictions in place for people doing or trying to say screwed up things, we will no longer be allowed to say anything. That really is like saying if you pass one law about something or just anything in general, there will be so many laws where we can't even do anything anymore. It's an extremely lazy position that kind of is it's a way of being able to not think critically about the type of stuff you're saying. And that's why I said a lot of people online feel like the internet should be the wild, wild west where you can just attack and do whatever you want to somebody with no consequence. And this guy said he thinks free speech should have consequences, but then he also said that people who post things online, like attacking or criticizing others, shouldn't have their information and faces shown because th- they're 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 hiding their faces as a way of like protecting whatever they have in real life. But then he also says it's all right to post a streamer's address in their comment section. So it's just a stupid person. That's all there is to that guy. And like I said, if these people were really being censored, they would leave these sites. They would go make their own where they can do whatever they want and see how well that goes for them. Or they. I remember this one time because we were talking about Alex Jones and I didn't support deplatforming him. And I think Facebook and YouTube did the same thing to Farrakhan. I remember someone pointed out that if the Nation of Islam was so like outraged over him being taken off of YouTube, they could easily take all his speeches because they have copies of them. I've seen one guy like post a bunch of them. They could easily take all his speeches and recorded public remarks and put that on a USB or a series of USBs, and then have it to where if you want to watch them, you have to come to their headquarters, or you can go on their website and like pay into something to watch them. All I'm saying is, I think with a lot of like with an organization as big as that one, where he's got all these bodyguards and his own site, I think they can afford to host their own videos. Yeah, everybody always cries about being censored. That really is a video that's worth making because if you see some of the stuff people will like say is censorship, you'll be shocked. Like I remember one guy, they turned the likes off on some video, but they left the comments on. He was like, "This is censorship," and he made a video. I was like, "But if you were being censored, wouldn't you also not be able to say anything about the video?" They left their comment section on so you can, display your outrage over whatever you're upset about. So I don't, whatever. Just I don't know. People just they say all kind of stuff. I don't understand. Mm. I have considered making another what if video. It might be what if I got married back when that stupid thing with that broad happened 5 years ago. Um, that'd be an interesting timeline to explore because presumably if that happens and I convert to this other religion and like move her out here and all the rest of that. A lot of the romance stuff I've done like wouldn't exist. Like I made that first hooker video like 6, 7, 8 months after that happened with her. So there's a lot of stuff that could change from that occurring. And if you think about it, a lot of the like more recent romantic pursuits possibly don't happen as well because if you're with someone and married to them and presumably happy, you know, I have no reason to believe that in like 2, 3, 4 years time I'd be back to like asking regular chicks out again. So there's a lot of stuff that could have been like very altered if she had actually stayed the course of what she said she would do. I don't know. I think alternate histories can be really like something worth just kind of going into. I probably would do some political ones too if I come up with enough stuff to just sustain it. It's just funny imagining how like one decision by somebody can just change so much. Because if I had actually gotten married to her, I mean, like that woman has phone expletive with me video wouldn't exist. The one that like asked me out and then did a backflip, that wouldn't have happened. Wow, like all kind of encounters be wiped out. And like I said in the videos, I always acknowledge certain bad things. Like I don't know what the deal with employers would have been because I know that for a while I stopped seeking out jobs because I was in school. So I don't know what would have occurred with that, but I'm just saying that that's an example of where I'm not going to sit here and tell you we all had like some great amazing circumstance with no issues whatsoever. But I am saying that I think a lot of things that are screwed up as it pertains to chicks, I would not have to put up with any longer if that had gone the way that it looked to be going at first. I remember I was thinking of making a video. It was going to be called "The Tragedy of Jesse Jackson Jr." and it was going to talk about how here's a guy who's in Congress for like 15 years. It was it, like 8 terms, and he's like really friendly with Obama. He's relatively young, um, and then he just destroys his whole career by wasting campaign contributions on stupid, frivolous crap that has nothing to do with running for office. I mean, 700,000 for some memorabilia on singers, I think is insane. But it's even more like tragic when you consider that if he had just held out a few more years, because this is 2012 when this happens. If he had just held out until let's say 2015, 2016, that was when Obama's former Senate seat would have been open, as in he could have run for the Democratic nomination for that and probably would have won because he had more name recognition than what's the lady that won that seat, Duckworth. And then after that, he could have run for president 2020. Um, And because he doesn't have the same baggage that Biden has with the whole super predators and all the rest of that stupid stuff, he would. I think he'd be a lot more of a stronger candidate against Trump than Biden would have been. So he really like ruined a whole bunch of stuff for himself. It's a real shame. Completely blew up his career for nothing. Mm. This person said that he wasn't surprised because that he would do that because look at who his dad was. Like, well, I don't really have an issue with the older Jackson. I mean, he was one of the people I wanted to do a documentary on because I felt like he had a pretty interesting career. You know, being one of the first, not the first, but one of the first African Americans to launch a national presidential campaign. You know, I think that there have been things about him that have been important. Yeah, there's a lot of ways things could have gone that are interesting. I remember this one person did a video. They were like, "Oh, what if McCain won the 2008 election?" I was like, "Well, I mean, the thing is, back when that was going on, a lot of people were afraid he was going to start wars with everywhere. But when you consider who did win and that we went from 2 wars to seven, he doesn't look as bad in compare. I'd say I'd still probably prefer Obama because at least you get, even though it's crappy, you know, some kind of healthcare reform. But I don't know. It's really difficult for me to say at this point because when you've lived through the 8 years of garbage and now you're being asked to say, hey, maybe you have taken other person's. Maybe. So much stuff just in retrospect is interesting. I'm trying to think what else would be different if like that actually went all the way. I guess I also probably wouldn't have what else is there? I don't know. I don't see myself still making romance content if I was with someone like that, unless I got divorced. So it would be that was another thing I was actually gonna talk about how like a what if it was like what if I never made romance videos? Like, well, I wouldn't have as many subscribers, but I would definitely still get harassed because I see people all the time if they mention like insane stuff with chicks on, you know, let's say a comment section on some different website, they get attacked by people. So it wouldn't be as much, but it would still be some, you know, pricks writing nasty stuff. And then when you respond back in kind, you're the bad guy. You'd be surprised a lot of people online like throw stones and live in a glass house. Like I had the one guy that wrote like all these paragraphs about me, and then he's like offended that I called him a villain. I'm like, are you serious? I knew you would talk about my paragraphs in a stream. It's like, well, if you barely get any comments and somebody starts writing some long running weird stuff, basically talking to themselves in your comment section, what do you expect them to do? That's crazy. They want to control. They want to say whatever they want to and control your response to what they say too. always something's wrong with these people. Make sure this is working. So if I get interrupted, I can pause it. Usually don't have to worry about interruptions on Monday, but that same person is here, so we probably will get an interruption. That's just how the cookie crumbles. No, I wouldn't want to do what if videos that often because I just feel like there's only a select few number of scenarios I think are really interesting. Um, like I know one of the most popular ones is what if Lincoln wasn't assassinated? And then I always say, well, I guess maybe you would have gotten some variation of the reconstruction we had, but the issue with that is because Johnson was a Southerner, he didn't he was like really fast to accept the South back into the Union. And I feel like Lincoln probably would have done the same thing. And then the major difference between the two of them would have been, of course, on Lincoln's support for civil rights and Johnson's opposition to it. So he probably, I think Lincoln probably would have gotten along very well with the radical Republicans in Congress. Um, and maybe progress would have happened a little bit quicker. But again, it's like when you look at Grant, for example, who's only a few years removed from when Lincoln was in office, and like his consider not as well attuned handling of that circumstance as historians would say. That's what makes it harder to know, if Lincoln would have still been able to perform in the manner that he had during his first term. So yeah, it's another one of those things you just have to consider. Oh, I was in this one server on Discord, or two of them rather. I left both of them. That really should be my nickname on that site, the server leaver. Just keep leaving all the servers. Like, oh, here's a new server. People are getting on your nerves. Goodbye. Who is this? Oh, it's spam risk. You know, what really gets on my nerves. A lot of these places that'll call you over a job, they don't even leave voicemails. Like they don't even say, "Hey, I'm this person." You're just supposed to answer every single random call that you get. I don't think I'm alone as far as like not really feeling that comfortable with these random people. Like if you don't know who someone is, um, that'll like stifle your interest in wanting to talk to them. I'll make a video. What if I kept talking to Triple L? I always think about that stupid line she had about I sincerely believe you would prematurely cut off a woman who was interested in you. It's like, what does that even mean? I'll tell you what that means. That means you're never allowed to not speak to one of them. You have to talk to them forever. You're supposed to be their slave, remember? Couldn't define what prematurely means. Too hard to narrow a specific time period for you to be allowed to not talk to them. But yeah, I was thinking about. I said, well, I mean, if I spoke to her for and the thing about people in hindsight is sometimes they look really good, or you start to think maybe I could have done this differently. But I spoke to her for 11 months, and in that time period, The only concession I was able to get her to do was meet me in person. Um, and she went against my wishes by saying that she considered me a friend. So that's why I didn't feel like I was losing anything by just saying, "All right, forget this." Because if you're going to speak to someone for some prolonged amount of time and they don't give you what you want, why should you bother with them anymore? That's why I said relationships in the modern era are such a joke because they're supposed to be things that benefit both sides, both the man and the woman. And a lot of these chicks just want a bunch of benefits for themselves. That's why if you make a request of one of them, like having a phone call or, I guess something a little bit more extreme, like meeting in person, they can never do it, no matter what. So yeah, that's why I cut her off. I was just sick of like the same thing every month. I was like, oh, here comes another hours long phone call with her that, goes nowhere. I still don't believe that it takes someone a year to know that they like a person. I'll never believe that. I've seen so many different chicks where the second I look at them, like, oh, she's really attractive. If she asked me on a date, I would say yes. I don't believe that you should have to sit there and talk to somebody for that long. Maybe talk to somebody for that long if you want to get married, but like just to go on a date, you need to speak to me for 11 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, I guess I compartmentalized it for myself because I said I'm done with chicks. I don't, asking them out is pointless. Um, and that's why it was like easier to just keep that going as long as it did. Because I got another one who I've been talking to since October. Um, and again, I don't consider that a romantic pursuit because I know if I say, "Hey, would you like to go on a date with me?" I know what the answer will be because it's always the same thing. But you see no growth or change in the demeanor of these chicks, no matter how long you speak to them. That broad's been denying me of a voice call since we started speaking, and it just keeps going and going and going. I tell you, they just get worse and worse. Like you had the one. I remember there was one on Reddit that did the same thing where she didn't want me to hear her voice or she didn't want to have a call. And I said to her, I don't know any people that become closer to each other and all they do is type crap. Like I've never had a single person where I was very friendly with them, you know, cared about them, and the only way I spoke to them was by typing stuff. It's never happened. Because I mean, just in general, people most interactions you'll have with somebody, at least in real life anyway, it's going to be voice to voice. Who the hell do you know that still writes letters? So yeah, that's the second one to do that. I should send her a message like, "Hey, look, this isn't working out. You're very annoying because I've been sitting here trying to like get you to do something that's very basic for months and to no avail. So goodbye." So I said, man, like trying to like actually take an interest in some chick and you know get to know her and all that. It just seems pointless because it's like every time you do that, you're in this like extremely stagnant interaction with them. I mean, you know, I'll never forget when Triple L, while not being upset with me, went to another state and for an entire month didn't say a word to me. And I said, I don't have any supposed friends that I don't try to make contact with in an entire month. I just doesn't happen. And then her excuse was the lamest thing I'd ever heard. Oh, I was at this house where there were other people and I didn't want them to hear my conversation. I was like, I'm supposed to believe that a 30 something year, that a, what is it, like 29, 28, almost 30 something year old woman couldn't go outside of her house and be on the phone with someone while she walked down the street, while she got in her car. I mean, who buys into that stuff? But that's why I said that, like, they really think the rest of us are just stupid, and because you're horny, you'll put up with any ridiculous thing that they do, and I don't. I've lost count of how many chicks I just said, you know what? That's it. You saw the one in that stupid server. I spoke to her for a month, and it was like just decent correspondence. And when she started doing that, do you like me? Are you falling for me? Crap. That was our last conversation. I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a slave to any woman. Expect you to put up with all kind of crazy stuff just to maybe get a date. A date that's probably gonna suck because the woman's boring. Seriously, I talked to some of these chicks over the phone or typing stuff to them. I'm sitting over there. I have my phone in one hand, my pillow in the other. That'd be really funny if like I actually want to date one of them. It's like the most boring thing ever because all they do is sit there and ask like very run of the mill generic questions, or they're like looking at their phone. Because I remember I mentioned that when my best friend came over to my house, usually we'll just like sit on some chair or some like some couch or like some series of chairs and just talk. And I'll like very rarely use my, and if I do use my phone, it's usually to show him something on there because it's like he's here to speak to me. He's not here to like just play on his phone. He can do that in his car, just like typing on it. I don't know. Man, I just feel like a lot of people when they're around someone, they never take advantage of actually like trying to get to know them or doing things with them. Because when my brother comes around, um, we watch movies together, we watch shows together, um, take pictures, go for a walk. There's all kind of stuff that we do. That's because he's here to see me, so I try to make it entertaining. Have a decent time with him. But I'm serious when I say that. Like I don't believe in any of that like modern approaching stuff because like chicks seem to never reciprocate anymore. And I know this isn't just a problem for me because I've seen them do it to other men as well. But at the same time, it's like what is the incentive to talk to someone for some protracted amount of time who is not guaranteed to, I should say, and actually is more likely to not like you back based off of what you've seen before. Still laughing at that one broad that on piss court that said get over it when I mentioned my experiences. I was like, you know what? I'll get over it when you can find a way of like going in a time machine and retconning all that stuff to not have happened. Then I'll get over it. I mean, if it wasn't for those experiences, we wouldn't be in this mess. That's another part of like that. If I did that, what if I never made romance videos? Um, like a lot of these exchanges between me and these people on these other sites have they have nothing to do with actually making content on this stuff. So what I mean by that is I was in a server for a video game when I met that chick, and she was what do you call it? I don't remember how the conversation shifted to that, but it started off about that game and then about some other woman blocking me out of nowhere after accepting my friend request because these women oftentimes are bipolar. Um, and I remember she just started to like try to argue with me about the romance stuff, but I'm just saying that that's something that still would probably happen because it wasn't, oh, she saw a video and then she tried to, no, it was, you mentioned this kind of like on the side offhandedly and then here you go. The second time some woman tried to debate me over that stuff, and it's always unwanted. It's always them trying to stick themselves in something that has nothing to do with them. Oh, so damn nosy. Hello, complete stranger. I'm going to spend the next hour trying to insist to you why you should still talk to a bunch of people who don't like you. Nah, those modern chicks, man, they're nosy. They waste people's time. They get a bunch of like random guys to defend them. It's a really sad cycle with this stuff. Oh, and my arm is hurting. I guess for me, I would just prefer if people would stop like making a lot of the claims that they do about these things because they don't know what they're talking about. Like when you say that someone has to go to, I still think that's hilarious. Go to the gym to get a date. I'll never regret not doing that stuff because, like I said, there's with everything I have a limit. We talked about on Saturday this crazy employer that wanted me to memorize like 3 paragraphs, 17 sentences in 5 days, and how even if I memorize that stuff, that still doesn't guarantee they try to fire me in a few days or weeks like those other two places did. Just it wasn't worth it. And a lot of this stuff with chicks, I'm sorry to say, isn't worth it either. I actually, what I'm more inclined, I was, by the way, I should mention, I was in this server and there was this one woman that was speaking, and I was like, man, she has a nice voice. I think she's just physically attractive 'cause I saw her picture. It's like, but at the same time, I know how this always goes, so I didn't even bother to like say anything to her. Seriously, if you have enough experiences with them, you can almost predict how stuff is going to go. You either send them a friend request, or in some extreme cases, they send you a friend request. And they find you amusing for a while. You're trading messages with them and speaking back and forth. But the one thing they love more than a man is to see a man fall, die trying. In spite of everything they've told you, eventually they will hate you. Seriously, if you look at the one that argued with me, it's going the same way for like a whole 2, 3 weeks, almost everyday messages, and now nothing. Same thing with that one since October. At different points, it's been a message every day, and now you might get one every 2 weeks. There was a whole month where she didn't say a word to me, and that's when I unfriended her. I was like, "This is stupid." Told you, I'm really prone to not having that chick stuff drag out longer than it needs to. Like maybe I'll have one that lasts for a couple of months, but the rest of those ladies, I'm good. You can have them. God, everyone wants to be friends. Like I don't need friends. I've never gone on here and said I need people to speak to, and I I don't have anyone to talk to. I've never done that because that's never been something that bothers me. It's kind of funny how like the romantic life and the, I guess, platonic friendships thing they're kind of like, what's a good way of saying it? They're like the reverse of each other, where I don't really consider myself to have that many friends just because I don't want more people to like. I just don't trust people on that kind of level to, want to associate with them in that way. Um, so me only having a few is a choice I made for the most part. And then with the woman stuff, it really is like you wanted, to get married, have a family, and then you're not allowed to do that because they can never know what they want. So it's funny how like those two things are they're so diametrically opposed to each other. I'm still laughing at all those different, like, I wish I could get screenshots from all the way back then where I just show all the different times some woman was like, "Hey, can we be friends?" It's like, "Oh my god, why can't they?" I should say, "Friends with me for what?" That's be the next thing I say. Like, "You don't know me? Oh, you're funny. You make me laugh." I was like, "Okay, thanks, but no thanks." They never asked, "Why would I wanna be friends with them?" I already said before that, like, most of the chicks I talk to are just, like, you know, they're just there. They don't None of them really get me excited. And the reason for that is because, when you know the pattern of their behavior, as far as just the things they do, I feel like there's no like, I'd be purposefully letting myself down to, like, actually get so attached to the idea of being with one of them. So that's a big part of the reason why I kind of just let them just exist on their own as a separate entity, and then if I ever feel inclined to speak to them again, I'll let them just say something. But yeah, a lot of them I don't have a problem with cutting off because I don't feel as if our exchanges or interactions are some like I need. Like with there was one I mentioned before where she had the thing that made me upset with her was that she made like a call with some person in her server, and there's barely anybody in there, and she could do a DM call if she wants to only talk to one person, but she like locks the room and then won't respond to my message. Stuff like that. I say you could argue, oh, that's such a minor thing to like stop speaking with someone over, but I feel as if a lot of times someone keeps doing something that upsets me. I'm not going to sit here and keep putting up with it. I don't care if you have a vagina or some other triangle. It doesn't. I'm not going to like give you special treatment because of your gender. So I said I never really feel. I mean, if I feel bad, it's just because I feel like, oh, if only they could have done this, But as far as like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done. No, almost every time they get what they gave. Because usually, if I cut off with one of them, it's after they've like not responded to me for a while. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I said, well, if talking to me was so important, why didn't you do it? If speaking to me was such an essential thing, you could have made an appearance even earlier than this. Seriously, I don't know anyone I've considered a friend, like at least since I became an adult, where I just won't send them a message or call them or anything for a whole month. Like that to me is insane. But that's just how people are. I guess they do ridiculous things. Oh man, no, don't ever let anybody on here convince you that you're gonna. Like my thing has always been this: if chicks decide to act a certain way because of your romantic attraction to them, you have to pay the price. Everybody knows there's a whole bunch of guys that have like trouble getting with a woman, which is why you often will see someone try to mock a man for being single. Um, but what's always comedic to me is that they seem to like underestimate how many men it is. Like that's why I've never liked the I word, for example, because I don't quite enjoy the idea that my best friend, for example, who never makes any romance content, um, but has like the same issue with women where they like never reciprocate. I don't like the idea that he would get associated with a group of people he's never interacted with because of something he has no control over. Because like I said, you can't make someone like you. You can go to the gym until you have a 16 pack. You cannot make someone like you. You could have $100 million and you you still can't make someone like you. I said before that, like, I can't believe people actually suggest the money thing, and then they're surprised. I would think the only way a woman would like me is if she's a gold digger. Like, why else would you recommend that? I've never once looked at someone and was like, oh man, she's so hot, but I wonder what her net worth is. I've never done that. So I said these standards are really ridiculous. And people want you to do a lot of insane stuff for nothing. Like, I'm sorry, some woman that no one's ever heard of, I don't care how attractive you think she is, she's not worth going to the gym every day for weeks or months just to like maybe impress, especially when she's talking to like what 10, 20, 30 other men. Are you kidding me? And they can get mad, you can get upset, but I don't care. Like I said, there are when you want people to do things, there have to be certain incentives. Like, you actually have to say, "Hey, look, we know that this sucks, but if you do this, this can happen." You don't see that with chicks. It's just a lot of like random people telling you to like jump through all these hoops, and then when you still don't get what you want, they blame you anyway. That's why I said that like the self improvement stuff doesn't matter, because no, as long as you get the same result, you'll get blamed regardless. So I said these people online never have a character arc. They never say this man went to the gym, he increased his net worth, and this woman still turned him down. Something must be wrong with these chicks. But you'll never see it happen with them. They'll say, "You probably approached in a weird way. You're probably too ugly." You know, they love doing that. So yeah, to hell with self improvement. It is a complete waste of time. It's just another thing for people to use to try and like say you're lesser than, you know. And I always say that like it's funny to me that most of the guys that go around peddling this very nasty stuff, you never see them. Like, they never show what they look like. They never show that they've actually been able to accomplish the stuff they claim, they know the answers to. I think that's really interesting. It's like, hell, if they're so smart and they know all the answers, why don't they go and show us how it's done? Why don't we see a video of them going up to some woman and asking her? Let's see if it how they fare. So I said, people online are such a joke. It feels like a lot of them like really get off on trying to make somebody feel bad about themselves. Like, that's just a thing they enjoy doing. And it doesn't really work when they come on here because, like I said, when you have the courage of your convictions, and you know that a lot of people who say the other stuff usually don't even have the things they claim you're supposed to. It's not hard to like write them off as jokes. No, that's what they are. If they were so successful, we would see or hear this woman that they're with. Remember when I started doing romance stuff and I made it where it was just like me sitting in front of a camera, I would just like I would just talk. I would just say, "Hey, this is what happened." And then you had people who would come in my comment section, "Are you sure this occurred in the way in which you described?" I was like, "All right, so if I'm not going to get the benefit of the doubt, then you shouldn't either. If I have to show proof, you should have to show proof too." So it never made any sense to me that like the same group of people who won't believe you on what you have to say or will like express skepticism at it. And my thing has always been this. Sometimes you hear a story or someone say something and you might think maybe this is incorrect, maybe this is not actually what happened. But usually I think a smart person, if they're actually trying to get someone to listen to them, will like keep that in their head, like, hey, I don't maybe I don't fully believe this. because they want the person to like at least get the idea that they're open to hearing them out or on their side in some type of way, to appear non-hostile. So I said people on here are just really annoying. They always act like they're these big successes with chicks, and it's such a joke. Oh man. No, I ordered this. It's like I think 3 books last week. I'm trying to get back into reading. I usually when I read stuff, it's like a news article or some other shorter thing, but like an actual full form book. And it sucks too because there's a lot of books that I really like. I just I remember when I was in like I think 10th grade, there used to be this thing on Google called Google Preview, and it would let you read excerpts from certain books. Which, by the way, I've always thought it was so funny how it's harder to get free. Like, if you want to go and watch a movie or a TV show for free online, it's very easy, But like actually, like getting a free, like going on some website and they have a book you can read for free, you'd be surprised how hard that is. I just thought that was really hilarious. Like, wow, you have to go through all these back channels to get to this book. No, I really I said before that like my favorite genre is memoir or biographies. That's because I really I enjoy the idea of multiple people writing about the same person or people and then having like their own spin or twist on it. Like, oh, in this person's book, um, the last 20 years of this person's life are only 5 pages, and then this other book, it's like 300. That's why I think is interesting. No, if there's 2 series of books I'd like to read before I die, it probably would be Robert Caro's LBJ series because of how long it is and just how long he's been working on that. Like I really can't think of another human being with like a whole series by one author about them that's that long, 4 volumes. And then Taylor Branch's Martin Luther King trilogy. Because I've been told there's some juicy stuff in there. I still want to get Ralph Abernathy's book. What was it called? The walls came tumbling down. I think it's just so sad that like that his whole story is just really depressing. The number 2 guy in the civil rights movement that gets completely ignored in there. Man, people just when they start hero worshiping somebody, they act like everybody around them doesn't even exist. It's really sad. People are always able to find a way to just like take one person out of like a group of people and hold them up and act like everyone else didn't even exist. Because we did a stream like that before. We were talking about like you'll see so many videos and dedications and all the rest of that stuff to Martin Luther King, but you never, and then maybe like Malcolm X, but you never see anybody talk about like Roy Wilkins or A. Philip Randolph or James Farmer, like any of the other like big six members, or even King's mentor, Benjamin Mays, the Morehouse president. It's just it's so sad that like all these other people, if they get discussed, it's to such a like smaller extent. I would go as far as to say that if I actually went through and like wrote the name of every single major person in that movement they had, the only one that has more than one book written about them by someone that's not themselves is probably King. That'll be the only one, and it's just so sad, man. And that's why I was saying that um, I've always thought it was so weird how people say being a serial killer is a bad thing, but then we have all these movies and books about like Bundy and Gacy and Dahmer, and it's like I'm not saying any of that stuff shouldn't exist, but I feel like if people do good things and they go completely unacknowledged, um, you know, there's something wrong with that too. God, so many important people they just never get talked about. Somebody will say, "Oh, well, why don't you go and write it?" But my thing is, I when someone writes a book about someone, for example, like I know that Taylor Branch was commissioned by the King family to write the series they did on King. So my thing is, if you're gonna ask me to do something as expansive as try to write a novel on these people, and also like find a publisher that's willing to put out there, um, I don't think it'd be possible. I really don't. Like I would have to have the backing to even be able to like go out, and because a lot of these people they have relatives like in the South that could tell you stuff about them, but to like fly over there and then like back and forth, it's just that's why I said when people tell you to like do things, they never really think about what all it entails. Just like I said, that the two senators the two current serving senators I'd like to do a documentary on are Collins and Murkowski. And in all actuality, I would love to write a book on both of them. Um, but again, the issue is that it's hard to reach these people. It's hard to, like I'd have to again go through the channels to even be able to make that possible. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of stuff that people get paid to do. I'm expected to like do for free. That's always been the most ironic thing about like all the people who online are like demanding you better do this. I said, well, hell, I can't sit here and be expected to do that stuff without some sort of reprisal as far as like actually getting compensated for my efforts. Because everybody else that does this stuff gets paid. So I feel like it would only be fair if I was given the same leeway. Somebody said a real funny thing about how well no I think I'm the one who said it, that if you work somewhere for 33 years you won't get any attention likely, but if you go and shoot up someplace and kill 33 people you'll have your name in the paper, and they'll try to like write a book about you or have multiple news articles about you and look into your background. I mean, like I've always just thought that was so disturbing, that how accurate that is. And I remember that one guy was like, why would anybody make a movie about someone that goes to school or someone that does something any other I was like, well, first of all, let's not pretend there aren't multiple serial killers. Like let's not try to like convince ourselves they're all so unique and different. The way it works is that they usually have a screwed up tragic backstory, with Dahmer being like the one possible exception because his dad was a really nice guy by his own admission and by what we've seen of him. They have like some kind of thing where they go around and exhibit early signs, kill animals, play with knives, stuff like that. um they commit their first murder, and then they go about trying to hide what they actually are from people, and then they eventually get caught and put in jail for the rest of their life, where they either are executed by the federal prison or by some prisoner. All I'm getting at is I don't really like, I feel like you could make the same argument for them, because even though there's nowhere near as many of them as there are of like regular people, the same like basic skeleton of a story applies for each one of them. That's why I was saying, like when I was talking about how, oh, if I wrote a memoir, my best friend wrote a memoir, you would, even though we both like went to school in the 2000s, 2010s, it's still not the same thing. Because for one thing, you know, the things that happened to me when I was in preschool might have been different than things that happened. I know they were. So that's why I said that people, they don't really think critically when they're opposed to something. They just kind of like throw cold water on things because they're anti everything. And that's just the way they work. They always find a way to be opposed to something. I don't know. I think it's really sad when you've got like a person who I can explain the significance of, and then the only way we can like read stuff about them is either a book they wrote themselves because they knew nobody else writes stuff about them, or um, they don't. What's another way of saying it? You see like little mentionings of them in different news articles. I think that's all really sad. But I guess maybe I shouldn't be too surprised because you look at the way people treat others, and it makes a lot of sense that they would get the this like very minimal attention for doing the right thing. Man, people just always they're always just so against stuff. It's really sad. Yeah, there's I don't know, I think maybe I've got this one relative I wouldn't mind doing a book on, but the problem is that they're if I did one on them, I'd have to mention someone I really don't like at all, that I think is one of the worst human beings to ever live. So I probably that's like the biggest reason for me to not want to bother with it. That's the one thing I like about the memoir. You can tell the story any kind of way you want. I remember when I read Reagan's memoir, they have like a thing where he basically acts like his first wife didn't exist, where she gets mentioned for like one paragraph or one sentence. It's like you're married to this lady for years, and all you can say about her is this one. But that's again one of the appeals of writing it yourself because you can choose what parts to magnify, what parts to ignore. It really makes sense where like writing a book about you would be appealing to you because you get to pick and choose what parts get discussed at length and what parts get glossed over. Oh man, this whole thing is just really sad. Well, I don't know. I just think I wish we had more biographers, like, and every year, every 2 years, 3 years, they write like a different book about someone. You know, I guess public perception really does affect who's important and who's not. Like I remember I was having this conversation with somebody else, and we were like talking about how if you go and look at any list of given, like, for example, politicians, how many of them actually will ever get something written about them? You know, you might get maybe one out of the like current 50 governors that'll have some book written on them, but like in general, most of them just get glossed. And it's really a shame because a lot of times if you discuss one of them at length, you can talk about the issues that occur while they're in office that might still be affecting you, that people might otherwise might not know about, like, hey, this started to this person. So there's a lot of value to that type of stuff. But again, when you only have one or a few people that acknowledge it and they have like difficulties with actually, making this stuff, um, it's always going to be something that's a problem. So thanks for watching. I'm not going to keep going because no one's been writing anything. Have a good rest of your Monday.